Yo, I had a crazy dream. And the fact that the dream seemed to last so long, but I was only asleep for 5 hours. So I'm gonna try to be quick and explain this dream. So I don't know if any of you guys ever played Clash of Clans or Castle Clash, the war type games. It's like fantasy war kind of a thing. Well, in my dream, there was something like that going on, but on a global scale, really. Um, so it was much more realistic war, but our technology was extremely advanced. So it was like, man, it was crazy. So someone would create a a military, basically, right? They would probably just start off themselves. They got some friends, their friends join. I've done this before, so I know how it works. I actually had a big like guild, like a huge guild. I really did this. Um, but you get people involved, and then people, from all around the world will start joining your guild. But in my dream, it was more so your military, because you in the game you were really controlling realistic and real life, military equipment, but it was virtual reality. And so if you got to a point where you have created this huge military, then it was like you had this huge colony online, right? This huge virtual reality colony of military uh, strength, and they would go to war with other um, people all around the world. And it got so it got so big. This is all a dream. It got so big that they had to start buying equipment, like electronic equipment, to hold that big of a military, basically, right, online. So this guy, like, I went inside this one guy's house, and he had something that almost looked like a modem. You know what I'm saying? But it was about, excuse me, I just woke up not too long ago. I want to make sure I get this dream out. It was about 3 times the size of a modem, almost like a 50-inch TV, almost. You know what I mean? Like, it was. That's how big this thing was. And this guy had a pretty large military. He had something like he has something like 50,000 people in his military, and his military was huge. He had it's not only was it huge, but they were defeating, the other people. So you can't just be big, you also have to have strategy, uh like military war tactics and whatnot. Now, also in my dream, we had like robots. We had like our men on the ground were not even human anymore. We were advanced at the point where we were sending robots into war on the ground. And so it made it extremely necessary, right? The Our government, like, pushed this. They wanted this to be a thing big time. Um because the more people are in this virtual reality, going to war, using these war tactics, all that, they then get to find someone they never would have thought, someone who typically would never join the military, but has a brain, has a leader's brain, who understands war tactics in a completely different way, when it comes to like technology. And so that's why they pushed it. They pushed it so much that you would get paid. You would get paid to do this. It would get sick. So it got sick. So the guy, I went to this guy's house and he had this huge modem. He had like 50,000 people in his military. And I went to look on the screen so I could see what stuff looked like. Now there's a game called Dune, Dune, way back in my day, on Sega Genesis. It was on Sega Genesis. It was on PC first, and then it was on Sega Genesis. And it looked very similar to that. I want that game, by the way. It looked very similar to Dune, where, you had just like these military planes or whatever, you know what I mean? But they didn't look like our jets we have now. They looked different, very, I could draw it actually, but just very high-tech looking military, flight stuff. And it was just a trip seeing it. He had everything in order. Everyone was in sequence with each other. Like, he had it going. His stuff was strong. And because it was strong, he was getting paid. Not only was he getting paid, but the people, his soldiers were getting paid. So imagine, like, we pay our military, we pay our Army guys, Marine guys, Navy, etc., Air Force. And so things had slightly changed. They were able, because we weren't using humans anymore, to go over, they were using that money to pay people to play these games on virtual reality. So it became a really big thing. Now, the other thing is, if your military got too big and you couldn't afford to have, 10 large modems, you could go to this place and rent it. Excuse me. You can go to this place and you could rent the equipment. They'll rent it out to you. So now these businesses are being created that we've never had before, right? So now it's this business where they're like, all right, look, you need so-and-so certain modems. Just take this. And I don't even know if it was a modem. I'm just using that. But just take this one. It gave them one, and then they would have everything else sent to their, to their place, to their building or whatever. And they would provide them with more room, more data, whatever, to be able to have more and more in their military. Like maybe all of a sudden they had the funds in virtual reality to build another, I don't know, let's say 500 helicopter bombers or something. I don't know, I'm just making something up. And that would cost money, and because it cost money, but they could afford it on the game, but they didn't have any more data. They didn't have any more room, like gigabytes or whatever kind of a thing. And so these companies would you could rent that room through these companies. And so you could afford that because you were already getting paid from having this dope military anyway. And you got paid based on your hierarchy in the military. So I went to the home of the guy who was the top, the general or whatever. And he had two girls, that were right underneath him. So he was the top, and then there was these two girls underneath him, and it was like they really had more skill than he did. He just had the leadership mentality. And but what was crazy is, so this is what happened in the dream. I watched this guy get mad and this girl got mad, and they started like having this fight over the game. And so I'm talking to the other girl, and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh man, he's about to lose his modem or whatever. I don't know what it was called, a modem. I'm just saying. I don't remember what it was called. But she's like, he's about to lose his modem thingy. And I'm like, why? He's going to lose his whole military. And she's like, that's why they're in there fighting. Like he was physically fighting this girl. Like a DV. But they weren't together. It was just, like it got bad or whatever. Got into a fight. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And this dude had broke down crying, screaming, and he went to he started beating on this chick. I mean, that's what it sounded like. They were in the room fighting. And because he's about to lose everything, I guess, I go outside and two SUVs pull up and look like Secret Service jumped out the truck. It's like 10 of them. Dressed in all black shades, straight business. And they walked straight into that house. And I'm like, wow. And so I'm like, I asked the girl, I'm like, is there nothing he can do? And she's like, oh, this is what he did the last two times. That's why these guys were here. She said the last time they're like, you got to pay up. What he did is he took a picture of his modem. I don't even know if this makes sense, but he took a picture of his modem thing, and to basically show that he still has things going, and then posted online like, hey, we're strong and everything's good to go, no worries. And then he went down to this community center where kids with cancer would like live basically their last days. And he went to go basically like take advantage of them. Like, hey, your last days, you might as well, do something that means something. And got these cancer kids online joining his. So he got the whole center. It was like, I don't know, 1,000 kids or something like that. That turns into more money for him. And all those kids got online, and he was able to make more money to then, pay for the. So she was like, all he's going to do is go to another center and try to use the kids with cancer, which didn't touch me, right? Because cancer survivor. Anyway. And so I'm like, what? And so anyway, those guys went inside there, and I don't know what they did. I know they took their equipment, and shut his operation down. So that was like a military of 50,000 guys. But what that does is it opens up a spot for someone in that military to grab the few that he's close with and build himself, Man, it was crazy. And I was aware that there was some guy who had built a military that was 1 million strong. It was one of the biggest in the online world, in virtual reality. It was 1 million strong. This guy was huge. The military is paying him like crazy. CIA had him like he was all the way, in it. And he didn't have his stuff in a house. He was so big, he had his stuff in like a building, and just had all this stuff going on. His little center where he did all his work himself, he had like 6 screens, and like he was a boss with it. And It was all done on virtual reality. You know, none of it played out into real life, but because he was so raw, they then took his skill set and they're like, all right, you built this huge blah, blah, blah. Now we need you for real. And they took the guy, and he was one of the highest ranking military, people in America, in our military. And, that's what it transferred over to be. So it's a crazy dream, man. It was a crazy dream. In five hours, I dreamt like this whole world had changed. And man, it makes for a good movie. There's a lot more I want to explain, but it would take so long. It would make for an amazing movie. There might even be a movie out about it already. You know what I mean? Because this is like a great idea anyway. But yeah, that was interesting.